When an average hockey fan watches a hat trick, it already feels like a once-in-a-lifetime moment. But the players on this list didn't just score 3 goals. They did it so fast that even NHL legends would be left shaking their heads in disbelief. In a game where 1 goal can change everything, these players flipped the script in record time, turning minutes, or even just seconds, into pure history. These are the 10 fastest hat tricks in NHL history. If you're enjoying this countdown of the fastest hat tricks ever, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more hockey stories that every true fan will love. In hockey, momentum can shift in a blink, and nothing swings it faster than a hat trick scored in record time. These lightning-quick bursts don't just add goals. They crush opponents, ignite the crowd, and etch a player's name into NHL history forever. That's why these moments truly matter. Number 10 on our list takes us back to one of the most unforgettable playoff performances in NHL history. And of course, it had to come from Mario Lemieux. Known simply as Super Mario, he wasn't just good, he was one of the most gifted players the league has ever seen. On April 25th, 1989, Lemieux and the Pittsburgh Penguins faced off against their bitter rivals, the Philadelphia Flyers, in Game 5 of the Patrick Division Final. The stakes were sky high, the building was electric, and Lemieux decided to put on a show that fans still talk about more than 30 years later. In that game, Lemieux pulled off a hat trick in just 6 minutes and 55 seconds of the first period. But it wasn't just 3 goals, it was the way he scored them. He struck early, finding the net only 23 seconds into the game, setting the tone before fans had even settled into their seats. Then he added another goal minutes later, and before Philadelphia knew what hit them, he had completed his hat trick before the first period was halfway over. By the end of the night, Lemieux finished with 5 goals and 3 assists, an 8-point performance that is still tied for the most points ever in a playoff game. What makes this special is the stage. Scoring a fast hat trick in the regular season is one thing, but doing it in the playoffs against a rival like the Flyers is legendary. The Flyers were known for their physical, punishing style, but even they couldn't slow down Lemieux that night. He made one of the toughest teams in hockey look helpless. Fans in Pittsburgh still talk about this game as the night Lemieux truly cemented his legacy as one of the greatest to ever play. This wasn't just a fast hat trick, it was a statement. Lemieux showed that when the moment was biggest, he had another gear, one that few players in NHL history have ever reached. At number 9, we have Peter Klima, a player remembered not just for his scoring touch, but for his speed and flair. Klima, who came to the NHL from Czechoslovakia during the Cold War, was one of the first players to defect and join the league, which already made his story unique. By the early 90s, he had found a home with the Edmonton Oilers, and in the 1991 playoffs, he gave fans a performance that proved he could shine on the biggest stage. On May 4th, 1991, in a playoff game against the Minnesota North Stars, Klima lit up the scoreboard with one of the fastest hat tricks in postseason history. In just 5 minutes and 13 seconds, he scored 3 times, leaving the North Stars scrambling and the Edmonton crowd buzzing. It wasn't just the speed of the goals, it was how effortlessly Klima seemed to glide around the ice. His skating was smooth, his release was quick, and when he was locked in like that, he could change a game in the blink of an eye. Klima's hat trick was especially important because Edmonton was in a transitional period. The great dynasty years of Gretzky and Messier were fading, but moments like Klima's outburst showed that the Oilers still had fight left in them. His ability to put together 3 goals in just over 5 minutes not only lifted his team, but also gave fans hope that the Oilers could continue to make playoff magic, even without all the stars who had defined their glory days. Peter Klima might not always get the same recognition as the legends he played alongside, but this performance is a reminder of just how dangerous he could be. A European trailblazer, a pure skater, and on that night in May, the man who carved his name into playoff history with one of the fastest hat tricks ever recorded. At number 8, we've got Brendan Shanahan, a player who built his reputation on toughness, leadership, and the ability to score in the clutch. Before he became a Stanley Cup champion in Detroit and later an NHL executive, Shanahan was a rising star with the St. Louis Blues. In the mid-90s, the Blues were battling hard in the playoffs, and Shanahan gave fans one of the quickest scoring bursts the league had ever seen. On May 13th, 1995, in a playoff matchup against the Vancouver Canucks, Shanahan put his stamp on the game with a hat trick that took just 4 minutes and 16 seconds. To do this in the postseason when defenses tighten up and every mistake is magnified is almost unthinkable. Shanahan had the perfect blend of skill and grit, and on this night, he unleashed it all. His goals came in a wave that completely overwhelmed Vancouver, showing why he was one of the most dangerous power forwards of his era. What made Shanahan so special was that he wasn't just a sniper. He could score from a distance with his heavy shot, crash the net for rebounds, or battle along the boards until he forced the puck into scoring position. That versatility was on full display during this hat trick. Vancouver tried to adjust after his first goal, but before they could catch their breath, Shanahan had buried 2 more. It was the kind of performance that breaks an opponent's will and lights up a locker room with confidence. For the Blues, Shanahan was more than a scorer, he was a leader who could drag his team into the fight. This hat trick in Vancouver is remembered as one of the fastest in playoff history and one of Shanahan's defining moments before his Hall of Fame career truly took flight. In less than 5 minutes, he showed why he belonged among hockey's elite. At number 7, we have Johan Franzen, a player Detroit fans still call the Mule because of the way he carried his team in the playoffs. Franzen wasn't always the flashiest guy on the ice, but when the pressure was highest, he had a knack for stepping up and delivering monster performances. The 2010 playoffs gave us one of his best examples, and it came against a powerhouse opponent. On May 6, 2010, in a second-round game against the San Jose Sharks, Franzen delivered a hat trick in just 3 minutes and 26 seconds. The Red Wings needed a spark, and Franzen answered with one of the fastest scoring bursts the postseason had ever seen. He didn't just stop at the 3 goals that night, he added a 4th later, finishing the game with 4 goals and 2 assists. 6 points in a single playoff game is rare enough, but doing it while ripping off a hat trick in barely over 3 minutes. That's the kind of performance that turns a tough series into instant history. Franzen had built his reputation as one of the most clutch playoff scorers of his generation, and this game proved why. He combined size, skill, and timing in a way that drove defenders crazy. Against San Jose, he scored from everywhere, crashing the crease, picking corners, and finding open space. Once he got rolling, the Sharks simply couldn't slow him down. What makes this hat trick even more memorable is that it came during a stretch where Franzen seemed to save his best for spring hockey. In 2008, he had already set a franchise record with 13 goals in a single playoff series. By 2010, he was feared as one of the deadliest postseason players in the league. That night against San Jose was the perfect reminder. When Johan Franzen got hot, he didn't just score goals, he buried teams. In just over 3 minutes, the Mule carried Detroit on his back and cemented another legendary playoff moment. At number 6, we have Tim Kerr, a player Flyers fans remember as one of the most dangerous scorers of the 1980s. Kerr wasn't flashy, but he was a pure power forward who made a living in front of the net. Big, strong, and relentless. He was the kind of guy who parked himself in the crease, took punishment from defensemen, and still managed to bury the puck again and again. And on April 13th, 1985, in Madison Square Garden against the New York Rangers, he put together a playoff performance that is still talked about nearly 4 decades later. That night, Kerr scored a hat trick in just 3 minutes and 24 seconds, one of the fastest in NHL playoff history. Playoff hockey is supposed to be tighter, tougher, and harder to score in, but Kerr made it look like a casual practice. He was in the right place at the right time, using his strength to screen the goalie and his quick release to finish chances before the Rangers even knew what hit them. By the time New York's defense tried to adjust, Kerr had already completed the hat trick. What makes this performance even more special is that Kerr wasn't a one-game wonder. During the 1980s, he was one of the most consistent goal scorers in the league. He had 4 straight seasons with over 50 goals, which is an incredible feat. But this hat trick showed his ability to dominate in the playoffs when it mattered most. For Flyers fans, it was the perfect example of why he was so valuable. He wasn't just strong, he was clutch. Kerr's 1985 explosion in New York proved that he was more than just a regular season scorer. In less than 4 minutes, he silenced Madison Square Garden, lifted his teammates, and earned a spot in the history books. For a player known for battling in the trenches, this was one of his brightest moments, and a reminder of just how dangerous he could be around the net. At number 5, we go way back in time to one of the earliest fast hat tricks in NHL history, scored by Harry Oliver of the Boston Bruins. Hockey in the 1920s looked very different compared to today. No helmets, smaller arenas, a zomjo, and a rough and tumble style of play, but goal scorers still found ways to leave their mark. Oliver was one of those players. Known as a smooth skater with a good scoring touch, he became a key part of Boston's lineup during the early years of the franchise. On January 11th, 1927, against the Chicago Blackhawks, Harry Oliver pulled off something remarkable. He scored 3 goals in just 1 minute and 25 seconds, a feat that left fans stunned and the Blackhawks reeling. To put that into perspective, that's faster than the time it takes most people to lace up their skates. In an era when scoring was generally low and games were often defensive struggles, putting together 3 goals that quickly was almost unheard of. Oliver's hat trick didn't just help his team in the moment, it also set a standard for what quick scoring could look like in the NHL. Remember, this was only the league's 10th season. The Bruins themselves were still a fairly new franchise, but performances like this gave them credibility and excitement, helping to build the team's identity as one of the league's toughest competitors. What makes Oliver's accomplishment even more impressive is that it has stood the test of time. Nearly a century later, his name is still mentioned among the fastest hat tricks ever recorded. That says a lot about just how rare and special it was. Fans in Boston back then may not have realized it, but they were witnessing a piece of hockey history unfold right in front of them. For Harry Oliver, that 85-second burst ensured his legacy as one of the earliest scoring stars in NHL history. At number 4, we have Derek King of the New York Islanders, who delivered one of the quickest scoring flurries the NHL has ever seen. King wasn't the biggest star of his era, but he was a steady winger with a sharp shot and a natural sense for finding the net. On October 15, 1991, in a regular season game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, he carved out his own special place in hockey history. That night, King scored 3 goals in just 1 minute and 18 seconds. Think about how fast that is the time it takes for a single commercial break on TV. In that short span, King completely changed the game, stunning the defending Stanley Cup champions. Pittsburgh had Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, and one of the most feared offensive rosters of the decade. Yet for those 78 seconds, Derek King stole the spotlight. The goals came in rapid-fire fashion. Once the first went in, the Islanders bench came alive, and before the Penguins could even regroup, King struck again. By the time the third goal found the back of the net, fans in the building were on their feet, realizing they had just witnessed something almost impossible. Hat tricks usually take a full game, sometimes even an entire career to collect. King did it faster than most people can finish a cup of coffee. This moment also gave King a signature highlight in his long career. He went on to play over 800 NHL games and later became a coach. But whenever his name comes up, this lightning hat trick is the first thing fans remember. It's a reminder that in hockey, even against a team loaded with stars, one player can have a magical moment that no one forgets. Derek King's 78-second hat trick remains one of the fastest and most surprising bursts of offense in league history. Crazy, right? And we're not even at the top 3 yet. If you're having fun so far, drop a like and subscribe. You don't want to miss the rest of this list, because the fastest ones are still to come. At number 3, we travel back more than a century to a player who was a star in the earliest days of professional hockey, Jack Dara of the Ottawa Senators. Hockey in 1919 was nothing like the modern game. The ice was rough, players wore little to no protective gear, and teams traveled by train. Yet even in those early days, moments of brilliance stood out, and Darrow gave fans one of the fastest hat tricks the sport has ever seen. On January 16, 1919, in a game against the Montreal Canadiens, Darrow scored 3 goals in exactly 1 minute, in a time when games were often low-scoring and defensive. Putting together 3 goals that quickly was jaw-dropping. Fans were used to seeing matches end 2-1 or 3-2, so for one player to explode for 3 goals in a single 60-second span was something they could hardly believe. Darrow wasn't just any player, though. He was a key piece of the original Senators, the team that dominated the early NHL. Known for his scoring ability and clutch performances, Derek had already made a name for himself in the 1915 Stanley Cup Final, when he scored all 3 goals in the deciding game to bring Ottawa the championship. That reputation for delivering when it mattered most carried into this incredible regular season outburst against Montreal. What makes his achievement even more impressive is that records from that era are scarce, yet his name and this feat have survived over 100 years. That alone shows how special it was. For fans in 1919, watching Darrow score 3 times in a minute must have felt like magic. For us today, it's a reminder that even in hockey's early rugged days, players could produce moments of skill and speed that still rank among the greatest. Jack Darrow's 1-minute hat trick is living proof that the game has always had legends who could take over in an instant. At number 2, we have one of the most respected names in hockey history, Jean Béliveau of the Montreal Canadiens. Béliveau wasn't just a great player, he was the definition of class, leadership, and skill. By the mid-1950s, he was already on his way to becoming a legend in Montreal, and on November 5th, 1955, he gave fans a performance that left everyone in awe. That night against the Boston Bruins, Béliveau scored 3 goals in only 44 seconds. Yes, less than a single minute. It's hard to even wrap your head around how fast that is. Imagine sitting down after grabbing a snack and realizing you missed not 1, not 2, but 3 goals, all from the same player. For the Bruins, it must have felt like the game slipped away in the blink of an eye. For Canadiens fans, it was another reason to adore the man who would go on to captain their dynasty teams. The goals came during a power play, and that was a big part of the story. Back then, the rules were different. A team on the power play could keep scoring without the penalty ending. Béliveau made the Bruins pay by finding the back of the net 3 straight times, turning a simple 2-minute penalty into one of the fastest hat tricks ever recorded. This moment also showed the kind of player Béliveau was. He had size, skill, and vision, and he could completely take over a game when he wanted to. His 44-second hat trick was not just about speed, it was about dominance. He made it clear that if you gave him an inch, he'd take the whole game. For Montreal fans, Béliveau's lightning hat trick became part of his legend, one of many highlights in a career that brought 10 Stanley Cups as a player and another 7 as an executive. To this day, his 44-second outburst remains one of the greatest examples of how quickly a superstar can change everything on the ice. At number 1, we reach the fastest hat trick in NHL history, a record that has stood untouched for more than 70 years. It belongs to Bill Mosey & Co. of the Chicago Blackhawks, and it happened on March 23, 1952, against the New York Rangers. When we say fast, we're not talking minutes, we're talking seconds. Mosey & Co. scored 3 goals in just 21 seconds, a mark so unbelievable that it almost sounds like a tall tale, yet it's 100% real and remains one of the most famous records in hockey. The story of that night is incredible. The Blackhawks were already eliminated from playoff contention, so it was supposed to be just another regular season game. But Mosey & Co. turned it into history. Early in the third period, he jumped on a mistake and scored. Before the Rangers could even reset, he struck again seconds later. Then, with fans still buzzing, he added a third to complete the hat trick in less time than it takes to play a single shift. Imagine being the goalie in that moment, 3 pucks behind you before you even had time to catch your breath. To make the story even better, Mosey & Co.'s line mate Gus Bodnar assisted on all 3 goals, making it one of the most memorable duos in a single NHL moment. And though Mosey & Co. was already respected as a talented forward, this one burst of brilliance made sure his name would live forever in the record books. What makes the feat so special is how impossible it seems today. Even with the speed of the modern game, no player has ever come close to breaking Mosey & Co.'s 21-second record. It's one of those pieces of hockey history that feels untouchable, the kind of mark that defines a career in a single moment. For Bill Mosey & Co., it wasn't just a hat trick, it was immortality carved into NHL history in the blink of an eye. And there you have it, the 10 fastest hat tricks in NHL history. From Lemieux's playoff magic to Mosienko's untouchable 21-second burst, these moments prove how quickly a player can change the game. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which a trick blew your mind the most. Until next time, keep your sticks on the ice and your eyes on the net.